Today, as you can see, we have a lovely assortment of lice treatment and prevention products. I'm going to be taking a look at each of these in turn. And today's selection from the Lice Elimination lineup is the Ladybugs Pesticide-Free Lice Elimination Kit. This kit, unlike the more conventional pesticide treatments, has all 3 steps that you're supposed to need in one box. This kit, I think, was slightly more than the usual $20. I want to say it was about $35. It's basically enough for one person, in my experience. I want to point out that it does provide instructions. However, there is a little bit of confusion. I started by reading the instructions on the back of the box, and then later read the instructions on the back individually of the mousse and the serum. There's a little bit of confusion. They are not exactly the same. So when you are using all the products together, follow the instructions on the box. They do give you a website address where you can watch the video of how to use the entire kit, and the instructions in that video align with the instructions on the box. You don't have to watch the video on the website, but again, those instructions match up with what's on the box. The instructions on each container are just a little bit different than on the box. One thing I will point out that is a little bit confusing is that they have a chart back here to tell you how much of the mint serum to use depending on your hair length. And so they have short, medium hair length, long hair, and extra long. The problem is they don't specify what they consider short or medium or long. So I kind of followed the guidance that was on the box for Rid for considering short or medium and long hair. This was really, actually, in my experience, has been really effective. I had initially used the Rid for a treatment on my hair and was not pleased when it was just a few days later and I had what looked to be an even larger infestation than when I started. I used this while watching TV. One day, the family, we were just sitting around on a weekend and watching TV. So that first treatment, to be honest, it took about an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes for my hair. My hair is a little bit longer than shoulder length, so this is a bit messy as well. They include a comb that they specify has finger grips because this can get slippery. Now, even with the finger grips, this is a very slippery, very oily mess. So even with the finger grips, it's kind of challenging, but it does seem to be highly effective. So you start, if you follow the instructions, you detangle your hair and you shake the serum vigorously, and then you apply this mint serum to your hair. And I consider my hair long, judging by, again, what the Rid box says. So I use the entire 4 ounces of serum on my hair. It's very oily. And again, it takes a while to apply that to your hair and get it to all work in. You want to apply it and get it into all the layers. So it's messy. The ingredients are dimethicone, Vitis vinifera, so grapeseed oil, and peppermint oil. So that's it. Dimethicone, grapeseed oil, and peppermint oil. It is very oily. It saturates the hair very well, however. I will give it that. It's easy to work through the hair, unlike the Rid shampoo. Very easy to work through the hair. Very easy to get into all layers. You know it's there. It's oily enough that you feel it. It's really easy to use. I do recommend draping a towel over your shoulders to protect your clothes and your hair. Again, I was doing this to myself, so it was probably a little bit more of a challenge than it would be if you were doing this to someone else, say your child, but it worked. It was very easy. Put that on, let it sit for 15 minutes after you massage it in, and then on top of that, without rinsing, you then apply some of the mousse. It says, I think it's 10 to 30 pumps, and you spread this all over the hair on top of the mint or the mint serum. That's where the instructions differ. Here it tells you to leave it in for 15 minutes, then shampoo and rinse hair, and then to follow up with the mousse and the comb. But the box tells you to not. So I followed the instructions on the box because it matched the instructions on the video. So mint serum, do not wash, then apply 10 to 30 pumps of the mousse. You work this into your hair and then let it sit for 5 minutes. Then again, you apply 10 to 30 pumps of this to your hair, and let it sit for another 5 minutes. Okay, so already you're looking at 15 plus 5 plus 5. So you're already looking at 25 minutes of just sitting and doing nothing aside from the combing and aside from the time for application. However, it smells really good. We're looking in the mousse. We are looking at water, sodium lauryl, sarcosinate, glycerin, isoceteth 20, I don't remember how to pronounce all these chemical names, plus peppermint oil, superoxide dismutase, disodium, cocoam, photiacetate, I don't know, whatever. So a few other things, but largely peppermint oil and some other things. Again, this was peppermint and grapeseed oil. So peppermint smells really good. Really messy. Your hair will get foamy. And so what they recommend then, after you've sat through all this, you use the comb and you start at the bottom for long hair and you do 2 to 4 inch swaths of hair at a time. Run it through. They recommend not really scraping the scalp, just lightly grabbing the scalp just a bit. And they recommend having large pieces of hair, large chunks of hair, so that the lice will get caught up in the large chunks of hair and come out with the comb. Again, this will be very messy. They recommend wiping this on a paper towel. So that's what I did. I went through so many paper towels, however, because there was so much mint, so much foam. It's just such a mess. And then once you're done, once you've gotten everything out, then you go wash and shampoo your hair as normal. And you do have to shampoo multiple times to get all of this oil out of your hair. Now, with all that being said, then for the next few days, it does actually recommend, let's see, you wet your hair with water and then detangle your hair and then apply mousse 10 to 30 minutes and let it sit for 5 minutes. And then you go through the combing process. They recommend that you follow up with the mousse every day until you get 2 to 3 clean comb outs. So that means 2 or 3 days in which you use the mousse and get absolutely no lice out with the comb. So you may have to use this for several days. I used it for 3 days after the initial comb out, I want to say, and found no lice in those last 2 days for sure. Maybe one louse in the first comb through after the initial treatment. So 4 days total I spent using this, and that pretty much there's just a tiny little bit of mousse in here, but 4 days total, and I am almost certain that I am louse free, and I'm pretty certain I've been louse free after the first day, the first main treatment. The follow-up treatments are not nearly as messy as that first because it is just the mousse and it does not leave your hair as oily or anything. There are just a couple of more things I want to point out here. One of them is that this comb I don't believe is as effective as the Lice Meister comb. So even though this has the grip to help with the oiliness, after that first night, I did use this the first night because everything was so oily and it was so hard to hold onto the comb though, even then, because there was just so much oil everywhere. So after that, I used the Lice Meister comb and I believe that was a little more effective. Let me show you the teeth of them. So this is the Lice Meister comb, and this is the comb that comes with the Ladybugs. You can see that they're a little bit, well, it's not so easy to see here. It's easier to see in person. But the Lice Meister teeth are just a little closer together. There's a little more gap space here. And it doesn't look like that much, but when you're talking about lice, which are so small, this makes a big difference. So I really think that this was a better comb to use with this set. Although this one certainly was not bad. This one you can also boil in hot water. Just like this one, I know from experience. I do recommend getting yourself one of these. No matter what product you're using, I recommend getting a Lice Meister comb. I have no idea how much it costs because this one was sent home from school. This is my favorite by far. All right, and the second thing I wanted to point out was that they recommend, again, that you wipe the comb off on paper towels. That you do so for 2 or 3 days, you have nothing wiped out. So in my experience, that first night, there was so much foam and so much oil that there was no way to see if there were any lice. Maybe that was just because I didn't have that many lice in my hair at that point, but I did have lice in my hair. But maybe that it was because there weren't so many that I couldn't see them. So what I did after that first treatment was go back to what was recommended with the Lice Meister comb and use water, hot water, to swish the comb out in. With the oil in the mousse, that was a little messy sometimes, but it was far easier to see the lice that had been combed out of my hair and into the cup, because that second follow-up, or that first follow-up, the second night of treatment with this, there were still a few lice that came out. And whether they were, you know, the dead bodies of the night before or were gotten with the second mousse, they were clearly there. But I couldn't see any on a paper towel. And so I do highly recommend instead using a cup of water to swish the cup out, to swish the comb out in, rather than a paper towel. Especially because if those lice have not been eating, they're going to be very hard to see. They're very small. And they really blend right in with the white of that paper towel. Or if you have a glass of water, especially if it's a clear glass and you have a bright light, you can rinse this out in the water, and then you can see the bodies floating in the water later. The mousse might foam up a little when it touches the water, but not much, and then it dissipates. So all in all, I really like this kit. I don't like the price so much because I think it was $35 or so. So I'm not as fond of it as I was with the AccuLife, which is the kit that they sent home with my daughter from school. Because again, you had to use so much product as well as the time involved. It does seem to have been incredibly effective though, and it smells good, but it's messy and it's time consuming and it is expensive. It is my second favorite of the shampoos that we tried. So it's a great follow-up if you have a tea tree oil issue. This I highly recommend rather than tea tree oil. If you have to treat multiple people, however, or if you have really long hair, you're going to spend a lot of money on this product unless you could get it in bulk.